It's wild to think that one of the most divisive films in recent memory is a movie where Batman fights Superman. This is a movie that launched internet discussions about its merits or lack of merit. Well, it's time for me to put my stance on the subject. I think Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice is fine. I don't think it's one of the worst superhero comic book movies of all time, nor do I find it to be a misunderstood masterpiece. I think it's a flawed, but nonetheless acceptable and entertaining action picture. Right off the bat, I like how the film shows a different perspective to the Zod-Superman battle at the end of Man of Steel, almost reflecting the mixed response to the climax from viewers. From the beginning, we understand why Bruce Wayne views Superman with contempt, and why he blames him for the many deaths that occurred. This is an older Wayne, one who's retired from being Batman after seeing all the criminality of Gotham, and those past experiences have certainly changed him. And he's definitely one driven more by emotion than his younger self. And I think Ben Affleck did a superb job of portraying that aspect of the character. He is so consumed by his own inner rage, he doesn't really think clearly about who Superman is. As for Superman, he's portrayed as a superhero who doesn't quite understand why there are so many against him when he's just trying to do good. That's an interesting idea to explore, although I find myself more invested in his reporting and how that ties into why he has a problem with Batman. This is better explored in the director's cut, which gives Clark Kent more screen time and better explains his reasons behind distrusting Batman. One of the other things I like about Batman vs. Superman is Lois Lane. Amy Adams' take on Lois is actually my favorite screen depiction of the character, and I like how Zack Snyder really leans into her being an investigative reporter. I know people felt her subplot was largely unnecessary because we know the Bullet is connected to Lex Luthor. Yes, we know that because we're the audience and are privy to information she isn't. Honestly, I would watch an entire All the President's Men style journalism drama centered around Lois Lane. Then you have Wonder Woman, who admittedly is not in the film much, as she mainly serves to set up her character before her solo movie the following year. I thought Gal Gadot managed to do a lot with what little screen time she was given, and I liked the sense of mystery with Diana Prince. But of course, she really steals the show in the climactic battle, when she first appears with her bracelets and shield and costume and that electric guitar riff plays. It's such a great moment. During the entire action scene, she's both taking the fight with Doomsday seriously, and yet also with the occasional smirk that says she's clearly enjoying taking down this monstrosity. Speaking of the action sequences, let's talk about those. Zack Snyder is primarily a visual director, and I do think that's one of his strengths. The various action scenes are directed with the proper punch and energy. While a lot of them are mostly filled with computer-generated effects, I still get a sense of weight and stakes from them. The titular fight between Batman and Superman is an impressive showdown, as we see them utilize their various skills, although Batman's certainly getting a little bit of help from that glowing green rock. The warehouse scene that follows shortly afterwards is one that opts for some impressive choreography and hand-to-hand combat. The great cinematography by Larry Fong also adds to the success of the action scenes. I also don't think Batman vs. Superman gets nearly enough credit for its sound design. This really is a movie made for the surround sound experience. And then there's the score by Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL. I already mentioned how much I enjoy Wonder Woman's theme, but Batman's theme is also worth commending, and the quirky notes for Lex Luthor fits the character's depiction here perfectly. I honestly think Batman vs. Superman has one of the best scores ever written for a superhero movie. Now, I'm going to discuss the two most contested and often debated aspects of the movie. First, Lex Luthor. When Jesse Eisenberg was announced to play Superman's most famous foe, most people reacted with a, huh? And when they saw the movie, most people reacted with a, what? Which, admittedly, I understand. When it comes to the most well-known screen takes of Luthor, you have the cold and calculating businessman voiced by Clarence Brown in the Superman animated series, and from the previous films, Gene Hackman and Kevin Spacey playing slightly sillier Lex Luthors with elaborate real estate schemes. He is usually portrayed as a serious man in a suit because that was what often came to mind when people thought of billionaires. However, the perception of the modern billionaire has changed. Nowadays, the common image of billionaires is the young, somewhat eccentric entrepreneur who prefers hoodies and casual wear over suits. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. Actually, Jeff Bezos kind of looks like Lex Luthor, doesn't he? Anyway, how does Jesse Eisenberg play the character? Well, like a young, somewhat eccentric entrepreneur who prefers hoodies and casual wear over suits. I actually found his performance to be a rather refreshing take on the standard comic book villain with plans of world domination. This is somebody who is definitely drinking a few too many Red Bulls, but he also proves himself to be a silent manipulator. Now, his plan to force Batman and Superman to hate and battle each other is certainly complicated with a lot of layers, and it's almost impressive how he was able to move the pieces without a hitch. Although I think the director's cut makes it just a little bit clearer how he was able to pull it off. A lot of people wondered how he figured out Batman and Superman's secret identities. But if Lois Lane was able to find out Clark Kent was Superman through investigative journalism, I think someone with an IQ as high as Luthor's has the resources to find it out. The next part that caused many a Twitter and Reddit discussion was the infamous Martha scene, and I can absolutely understand why a lot of people found it silly. When you simplify it, the entire premise of that scene is that Batman and Superman stop fighting because their mothers have the same name. Even Teen Titans Go have made fun of this a few times. And yes, it does feel like the scene came about because a light bulb went off in someone's head like, wait a minute! Bruce Wayne's mother's name is Martha, and Clark Kent's mother is also called Martha. Batman and Superman's mothers have the same name! But it's time to leave the jokes aside, because I actually want to try and analyze what Zack Snyder was attempting to convey. The intent seemed to be to show that Batman, who's been so consumed by his hatred for Superman, doesn't see the Man of Steel as somebody who could possibly have loved ones or any sense of humanity. And yet, here he lies on the ground asking to save whoever this Martha is. A lot of people found it amusing that he reacted so strongly to a name, but this was his mother, who he saw shot and killed before his eyes. This was a pivotal moment in his life, the whole reason he decided to dress like a bat and stop crime. In this rare moment of vulnerability, Superman seems more preoccupied with saving his mother than the likelihood that this billionaire in a bat suit is going to stab him to death. So I think Snyder was definitely commenting on something genuine here. Now, I do agree that the editing makes Batman's switch seem abrupt. Even the director's cut does not change this, and I feel there could have been a few more scenes here. The scene does sort of play out like this. Save Martha! Why'd you say that name? It's his mother's name. Oh, okay. So it's also easy to see why people thought this scene was executed in an odd way. Now, do I think the movie has problems? I do have criticisms, yes. Like that scene where Wonder Woman watches a few post-credit scenes. The Justice League are introduced into this universe because Bruce Wayne sends Diana a few MOVs. Batman and Superman are busy fighting a giant monster right now. Sorry if I think that takes top priority. There's also that strange scene where the Flash is talking to Bruce in his dreams. Honestly, the first time I saw the movie, it did not immediately click with me that it was Barry Allen. The dialogue did not make a lot of sense to me, and it did not seem to entirely pay off in Justice League. It may not even come into play in any of the future DC movies, so that scene just feels pointless to me. Aside from introducing Wonder Woman, I do think Batman vs. Superman might have benefited from being a bit more self-contained, with maybe a little tease setting up Justice League at the very end. Now, a disturbing element I found with some detractors of the film was this need to attack Zack Snyder. I don't mean criticizing his direction or the editing and the storytelling choices, which is all fair. I mean flat out personally attacking him and calling him horrible things. It got to the point where I actually did some research on Zack Snyder and watched a bunch of his interviews, because surely he must be a horrible person for viewers to say such things about him, and nope. What I found out was that he's a passionate director who has a close relationship with his wife, to the point they work side by side on the film sets, and treats the cast and crew in a respectful manner. Amy Adams has even said Snyder is the nicest person she has ever worked with. When Amy Adams is vouching for you, you're doing something right. I'm not saying you should give his films a pass because he's a good person, but with us currently finding out who the real monsters in Hollywood are, why are we dragging Zack Snyder through the mud? Most of the accusations of him being a hack and other things I won't dare repeat seem to come from those who disagree with his interpretations of the characters. And I understand these are iconic superheroes people are attached to, but here's the thing. Superman and Batman have existed for about 80 years now, with many comic book artists, writers, and directors doing their own interpretations over the years. Tim Burton's Batman is different from Bruce Timm's Batman, who is different from Joel Schumacher's Batman, who is different from Christopher Nolan's Batman, who is different from Zack Snyder's. You're going to see versions of these characters that don't align with your personal idea of them, and that's okay. If this Superman is not to your taste, there's one on the Supergirl television series that might be more to your liking, or any of the animated productions Warner Brothers makes on a continual basis. You're allowed to hate Batman vs. Superman, and I understand why people do. What I don't understand is when people feel the need to throw vitriol at a filmmaker who just wants to put his own stamp on the DC superheroes. He does not deserve it, no matter what you may think of the execution. See you next time.